Bitcoin was the first cryptocurrency ever made, and to this day, 12 years later, still the market leader. However, its position at the top has been challenged a number of times, most notably by Bitcoin Cash just a couple years ago, resulting in one of the most tense times within the crypto space. So, without further ado, that's what we're going to talk about today. So Bitcoin Cash, as most people know, is just a fork of Bitcoin. Simply put, a fork happens when there is a disagreement in the upgrading of a code, in this case Bitcoin code, and when the upgrade is pushed, it results in a clone of the original code, but with the upgrades mentioned. So when it was forked, Bitcoin of course was its own chain, and Bitcoin Cash came off of it. Now the main difference between Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash is just the larger block size. For Bitcoin, the block size is 1 megabyte, and for Bitcoin Cash, it's 8 megabytes, so 8 times the space. And this actually gives it the ability to include more transactions every block and make them very fast, of course. But the tension in this space at the time, of course, was very, very high between so-called big blockers, which belongs to people who were advocating for Bitcoin Cash, and of course people who thought Bitcoin should just remain the same. And you would think that, after the fork happened, that would be pretty much it. Both parties have what they want. But in this case, both communities, although not united, now have their own coins, whether it be with a bigger block or not. And it actually got worse. Now, big blockers were saying that Bitcoin Cash was real Bitcoin. Now, saying this is one thing, and actually believing that is one thing. But the problem came in the marketing. You see, it's one thing to fork Bitcoin, which many projects do, and they've done it in this space, and call it what you want. Obviously, add different upgrades to it, and give it a different name, slap a different name on it. But it's another thing to introduce newcomers to the space and pretend like Bitcoin Cash is actually Bitcoin. Not only is this misleading and confusing, confusing the hell out of people, but it's also very dangerous. Both chains have the same type of wallet addresses, so they're identical in appearance. The thing is that if you accidentally send real Bitcoin to a Bitcoin Cash address, it's gone. So you can see the issue here, right? If a newbie, comes through and thinks it's all the same, it's a recipe for disaster. God forbid one of these guys sends a Bitcoin to a Bitcoin Cash because one of the people from the community was saying, "Oh yes, Bitcoin Cash is real Bitcoin." It's not going to end well. And the thing is that there was multiple instances of this happening. Simply put, the marketing of Bitcoin Cash was causing a lot of people, mainly newcomers, to lose a lot of money, in this case Bitcoin. Now, as tension between the two communities built, and of course price fluctuations of the two cryptocurrencies got increasingly larger, another upgrade to the Bitcoin network was really at the center of everyone's attention. The New York Agreement, also known as SegWit 2x, was proposed months ago and supposed to help Bitcoin scale, and was slowly coming to a demise more and more as individuals and groups decided that they just didn't want to support it. And one of the most vocal parties was F2 Pool, a Bitcoin mining pool located in China. Now many, including core developers and people from the community, consider this upgrade as an attack against the Bitcoin network, and honestly just didn't want it. Thus, it was canceled, and on the 17th of November, ceased to exist, partially due to a bug in its code. And real quickly, the SegWit 2x upgrade, as far as I'm concerned, really would have just doubled the block size of Bitcoin from 1 megabyte to 2 megabytes over time, and I think there was another little addition there. But the main thing is that at the end of the day, it seemed that corporations and other companies were trying to push for this, and the core community and developers just didn't seem to want it due to them thinking that maybe the parties who were pushing it had malicious intent. Now, around mid-November, in the midst of this SegWit 2x controversy, Bitcoin Cash was exploding in price, and it went from about $600 a coin to a high, pretty much all-time high, of $2,200, an almost 400% increase in only 3 days. That's a lot for a coin, all the way at the top of the coin market cap scale. Not only that, but one Bitcoin Cash was valued at a quarter of a full Bitcoin. So 4 Bitcoin Cash could have bought you 1 Bitcoin at the time. Now, the term the flippening doesn't only match to the prices of these cryptocurrencies. It really means, we're talking about market cap, we're talking about hash rate. And in this case, by the way, market cap was almost about half of Bitcoins at the time. which is pretty nuts. But we're mainly talking about hash rate. You see, hash rate is like a wall of defense for any blockchain. The higher the hash rate is, the harder it is for someone who wants to cause harm to the network to gain control of the blockchain. Now, technically, when a chain forks and two cryptocurrencies are the result, which is what happened, of course, with Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, the one with the highest hash rate is considered the main chain. Why? Well, simply put, there's a higher hash rate because more miners chose to mine on that chain. This wasn't the case with Bitcoin Cash when it first forked in August, but looking at the hash rate charts on November 11th, Bcash hit a high of 5.5 exahashes per second, while Bitcoin had dropped from 11 that previous day down to 7.2 exahashes per second. What does this mean? Well, miners were switching sides, essentially. From their perspective, they will always mine the most profitable chain, because at the end of the day, they need to pay the electricity costs for running these huge factories full of mining rigs. But from what I understand, it was also somewhat of a malicious attempt to steal hash power from Bitcoin and bring it to Bitcoin Cash. I wasn't able to find enough information on if the miners were actually colluding or not. From my understanding, they definitely were. But long story short, Bitcoin Cash ended up taking that final L, and to this day, Bitcoin is doing 145 exahashes per second, while Bcash is at a measly 1.5. So, obviously in this case, Bitcoin definitely won out. Now, while all this stuff was happening, little old Hunter, obviously I was involved in the crypto space at this time, and I wasn't exactly aware of what was going on with the New York agreement, Segwit 2x, and all that other stuff. I'd heard about it, but I didn't really care that much. At the time, I was really just concerned with getting the little altcoins, as the prices were kind of booming. But I was using Bittrex at the time, the exchange, and that was when if any of your coins got listed on Bittrex, it was gonna moon. Bittrex was like the Binance of the time. And I remember, having a little bit of, I guess, extra cash from some of my altcoins, and I saw Bitcoin Cash just blowing up. And for a second there, I was like, yo, like, maybe this shit might happen. So what I did, I decided to become a trader. And, I went ahead, and I forgot what prices I was buying and selling at, but I remember one day where I think I literally remember looking at the Bittrex charts, and the prices were going up and down like crazy, like nothing I've ever seen before. And, I was looking at the chart. I'm like, you know what? It looks like it might have bottomed here because I think it already went really, really high and came back down a little bit. I said, screw it. And I bought it, and I want to say it was maybe with around $2,000. I think it was. I could be wrong on that though. But I tell you, dude, as soon as I bought in, maybe it was like a couple minutes later or something like that, I checked my phone again, and that shit was going all the way down, bro. And I was like, yo, this is nuts. Like the entire day, I felt horrible. I was stressed out. I was like, yo, I'm gonna lose my money, all this stuff. And I remember like that's what taught me that I wasn't a trader. And it contributed to a lot of things, and I think that's why I always tell people that I don't trade, I invest. I do my research and I buy things and I leave it there. I don't look at the markets too much anymore. I mainly just focus on doing research, because I tell you it's not worth the stress in my opinion. But all this stuff that happened, with Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash to me was so interesting. Long story short, by the way, I lost my money. I didn't lose all my money, but I'm pretty sure I lost some money, and I kept going with it. But this whole situation that happened with Bitcoin Cash, it was very interesting to see, because obviously at the time, I just got into the space, and obviously I had a lot of, respect for Bitcoin and obviously, the coin itself. But, again, when you're in a very new space, like I think it's pretty easy to, take the idea that anything could happen. And in this case, the potential flippening of Bitcoin, because it really looked like it was going to happen. I think it was the 11th to the 12th of November. If you're looking at the actual the hash scales, the hash rates, because those were literally about to flip each other. Not the prices per se, but the hash rates. And it's kind of crazy, looking back at it, it really kind of shows you, at the end of the day, who wins out, right? I think it's at the end of the day, it's the group that does good by the people. Obviously, I mean, if we're talking about like movies or anything like that, right? The heroes, just because I mean, like you had from what I understand these miners colluding. You had Roger Ver and his Bitcoin Cash community almost kind of like misrepresenting what Bitcoin Cash was and trying to represent it as Bitcoin. And again, It's one thing to do that with anything else, like to say like you say you got a fake pair of Nikes and calling it Nike. All right, that's whatever. But this is people's money. I mean, when you misrepresent a coin, you could potentially have someone send the wrong coin to the wrong address and have them lose it entirely. And that's what we were seeing a lot. And I remember seeing that on Twitter, Reddit, all that stuff. That people were losing money because of that. So to me, that's what made me not like Bitcoin Cash at all. It was just the fact that this dude was so adamant about saying this was the real Bitcoin, this is the real Bitcoin, all at the expense of innocent people losing their money. So, anyways, those are just my thoughts, of course, not financial advice. Nothing against Roger Ver. I don't know much about the guy, but all I know is that his marketing to me is very mischievous. Anyways, comment down below. What do you guys think? Do you think that anything like this could ever happen again? I just did a little research about this the other day. I thought it was really interesting just to kind of look back a couple years later and see where both the coins are, considering it's, they were literally neck and neck at one point, and now they're kind of, worlds apart. But let me know down below. I would love to start a conversation. Who knows? I mean, 'cause, the biggest thing we're talking about right now is the flippening of Ethereum. Could the Binance chain flip Ethereum? Obviously, two way different things in this case, but let's see. I don't know. Is it possible? Let's talk down below. Come on. Stop watching this video. I'll see you in the next one, all right? Peace.